power, power, power. And the most common response of people in Mark 1 through 8, it says, the people were amazed. Okay. It's all about power. Okay, so Peter has been walking along behind Jesus, seeing him do all these things, and he's saying to himself, if this isn't the Messiah, then who is? This has got to be the one. Okay, good for you, Peter. We're with you. But I don't see anything that helps with the double touch healing, so I'm going to keep reading. Verse 31. He then began to teach them the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. Peter's great moment lasted 2 verses. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." Okay, I've noticed a lot of people like to mark in their Bibles, and what I've also noticed is they almost always mark the wrong stuff. Okay, so let me help you mark the right stuff. If you are a Bible marker, what you want to mark is verse 32. Verse 32 is the key here, and the key words are, he spoke plainly about this. Okay, this is the first time in the book of Mark where Jesus ever speaks plainly about his death. And from this point forward, everything changes. From here on out, whenever you read that verse in Mark, you should hear in your head this squeaky hinge as the whole book pivots right here. This is where everything changes. He spoke plainly about his coming death, and Peter takes him aside and begins to rebuke him. Okay, I wasn't there, but I can tell you what Peter said. This is what Peter said. That's not how the story goes. Messiah doesn't die. What Messiah does is kick the hated Romans out of Palestine, restore the glories of David's kingdom, sit on the throne to reign, and by the way, puts us on little thrones all around him. That's the way the story goes. Yeah. And Jesus rounds on Peter, and in the sharpest rebuke anywhere in Scripture says, "Get behind me, Satan." Whoa, I don't know. I think I might take that a little personally. If I were Peter, wow, there's a grip here. We're on the same side, sort of. And then when I see this, it all clears up for me. Because Mark loves to do this. He loves to tell stories back to back that interpret each other. And if you look carefully, you'll see that the double touch healing story and this story go together. There are 2 people here who see but don't really see. Peter and the blind man. There are 2 people here who need to be touched again so they see clearly. Peter and the blind man. The 2 stories go together. It's a symbolic healing. Jesus didn't have a power outage that day. Mark's telling these stories back to back to try to get us to see something. So this first guy, he's touched by Jesus and he sees, but he doesn't really see clearly. He can't tell the difference in people and trees. I assume that'd be the same effect I'd get if I took my contacts out. You know, I could see you were still there. You'd just be a great looking bunch of coconuts to me. He touches him again, he sees clearly. Okay, Peter sees, but he doesn't really see. What he sees is Jesus is the Messiah. What he doesn't see is what the true story is. And Jesus says it is so important that until he gets the story straight, guess what? He's on the wrong side. Now that's pretty important. We've got to get the story straight. It is not enough to say Jesus is Lord. You have to understand that this story is about the cross. That also clears up some other things in Mark. You've probably noticed how often in Mark Jesus will do something for someone and then he'll say to them, "Go tell." And we've come up with the most ridiculous reasons for that. You know, the one I often hear is the reason Jesus tells people not to tell is because he knows what people are like. And if you tell them not to tell, what they're going to do is tell. And that's what he wants them to do, is tell. No. All that may be true, but Mark's not doing psychology here. The reason Jesus tells them not to tell is because, I'm not cussing now, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know the story. What are they going to say? Jesus is this wonder worker. I'm amazed at him. But that's not the story. The story is Jesus is going to go to the cross and die. That's the story. And until you get the story straight, you don't have anything to talk about. Or you're going to wind up being on the wrong side. Okay, now we need to pause for a moment and appreciate how difficult this moment is for the apostles. You think you've signed up for the power cruise. You've just found out you're on the death boat. That's why this is the crucial moment in Mark. The question is, will they continue to follow Jesus when they find out that he's not going to just lead them to power, but when they find out he's going to lead them to the cross? And the whole rest of the book of Mark is going to be about that question. Now that you know what the story is, will you walk this way? Okay, so sometime you don't have anything else to do. Look in, after this one, in Mark chapter 8, Jesus predicts his death in 2 more chapters in a row, in chapter 9 and chapter 10. And every time Jesus predicts his death, the apostles are having a stupid conversation. Jesus says, I'm going to go to the cross and die, and the apostles are talking about who's going to be greatest in the kingdom. Jesus says, I'm going to go to the cross and die, and the apostles are talking about who gets to sit on your right and left hand. Okay, each time Jesus is talking about death, and they're talking about power. Okay, that's the competition here. Is the story about power, or is the story about death? Okay. Now, the great thing about this passage for a theologian like myself is I don't have to worry about how to apply it. The text actually does it for me. You know, if you keep reading, you get the application. And now, if you'll open yourselves up to it, there's a great possibility you're going to hear the gospel here in the next few minutes in a way you've never heard it before. Not because I'm so good, but because Mark is. And he's got this deep, remarkable understanding of the gospel that we often don't see. Verse 34. Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and said, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. Okay, at one level, it's very simple. Jesus says, if I'm your Lord and Master, and I'm going to the cross, and you're going to follow me, guess what? You're coming too. So take up your cross and follow me. Now that's tough enough as it is. I was sitting in Lipscomb Chapel one day, and there was a really well-known speaker I was looking forward to hearing. I'm not going to say his name because I get ready to say something nasty about him. And he got up and said, I want to talk to you today about integrity. And I got really excited because I'm an ethics teacher, and I don't know if you've noticed, we've got some integrity issues out there. So I thought, okay, we need this. And he's a really good speaker, so we're going to make some headway here on integrity issues. And then, unfortunately, the next line is something as follows. I went and I talked to the 3 most successful people I know, and I asked them to what did they attribute their success, and all 3 said the same thing: integrity. You know, I'm sitting there on the front row. Sometimes I'm not as good at hiding my emotions as I should. I think I did something like, oh! Thinking to myself,